It's a new subject for all of us, so I will try to, first of all, demystify the whole thing and then look at the big opportunity for all of us in the chemical sector. Starting with Mr. Sai Prasad Jadhav, sir. You are making all the noises that is required to be done. How do you look at this big opportunity and where is the treasure hunt?
So, thank you. Good evening. It's a fag end of the day. I know everybody's tired. But treasure hunt, of course, it's a new field. It's an emerging field that is there. So, a first mover advantage is always there within India. So, that is where the treasure hunt is. And basically, this whole field, what we are doing is basically converting something that is coming out as waste into value-added products. So, we have started with coal tar, which comes as a waste from steel plants. And we have been developing this process for the last 4 years internally. A lot of innovations that have happened, a lot of patents that have been filed on this. And finally, we are setting up our plant at Vijayanagar for anode material as such, which is, so a lot of developments that have happened over the period in this particular field on the anode front also. So the anode for the lithium-ion batteries basically starts from coal tar through various processing that it goes at distillation level, also at different thermal treatments that we do at various degrees, at various temperatures, finally at 3000 degrees, with a lot of physical transformations on shaping milling that we have done. We have now at, you can say, sample A, B, C, that is the various stages that are there. Finally, we are at sample C today with most of our customers, domestically as well as internationally. And with the, of course, the China Plus One policy and the IRA that has been announced by the US government, a lot of opportunities are there. And the same modular we want to do, in a modular way, we want to grow, right? From India, we had announced a project in Finland, which is at the EIA stage today, as well as in the US, where we are identifying the site for setting up our next project.
And which are the industry verticals that you are looking at, sir?
So today in Epsilon, we have various verticals where we are serving the aluminum industry with our pitch, which they use for their own anode manufacturing, green anode plant. We are into naphthalene, where we are for the dyes and the construction chemicals. We are into various other chemicals which come out of coal tar, basically the phenols, the cresols that we are looking at. Going ahead, also we are today in carbon black, which is for the tire industry. And this is the third vertical that we have, completely integrated, right from feedstock to the fuel to the anode being a very highly energy intensive industry. Whatever gases that come out from a carbon black, that is again put into our captive power plant, and this energizes the whole complex, both for power as well as for the steam requirements.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pikin Jain, how do you look at this new industry and where are you positioned as NextGen?
Yeah. Good evening, Prashant, Praveen. So basically, if we see this industry, it has just started in India. So like, you know, the major push came from the PLI, which the Indian government announced for this lithium-ion batteries, ACC cell manufacturers. So that really kick-started the process. So believe me, NextGen as a company, you know, we have been in lithium chemistry for last 30 years. And we have been, you know, working with very, very niche customers in this field. And when the lithium-ion battery was a workspace which we thought we can work upon. So, you know, we were trying to connect with the companies like, you know, we can do the lithium salts like lithium hexafluorophosphate for you. But really things were not moving. Then COVID happened. Unfortunately, we all went back by 2 years. But then 21, the things really started. I believe, you know, this industry, you know, with these net zero commitments we have made, the battery applications in EV and the stationary battery storage applications, with the kind of corporates who are getting involved in this landscape, I believe, it has a very, very good future. Although the ramp up of, the volumes, gigawatt hours will be very slow. It's complex technology, the validation, the ramping up of capacities, the sales will take time to pick up. We get feedbacks from many of our customers, what are their plans, some of them say they're starting in 24 end, some of them say 25 beginning. It all needs to be seen, but, once the technology is established at the customer's end, and then the ramp up would be very fast. So my take is the future is definitely there. We have no options, and the only thing is how the technology succeeds, and how we are going to ramp up the volumes. That's the only thing in my mind.
Thank you, Mr. Pikin Jain. Mr. Chandrasekhar Chincholkar, if you can talk about how do you see at this industry, and you have been working, or your company has been working a lot on this front.
Yeah.
So your views, how big is the India opportunity? Any numbers if you can throw, both global as well as India numbers?
Sure. So I represent a company called Customized Energy Solutions India Private Limited. We are primarily a US-based consulting firm, started in India in 2010. We were the pioneers for the first draft document on ACC PLI in 2016-17. It took us almost 5 years to really get the policy cleared from the government level. And both NextGen as well as Epsilon are members of our alliance, which actually has been helping us a lot in terms of putting up the demands to the government. So the first capacity that RFP that government announced under ACC PLI is 50 gigawatt hour. Allotment was 30, 20 got cancelled because of some issue with the Hyundai global name, which was not actually Hyundai, but probably a dealer from Middle East, that the capacity got cancelled. But again, Deloitte has been given the mandate to reissue the 20 gigawatt hour, and we believe that Reliance probably seems to be the best positioned company as far as that additional 20 is concerned. So 50 gigawatt hour has been already been tendered, assuming that this 20 goes through in quicker time. The initial bids that were received when this 50 gigawatt hour was announced was 130 gigawatt hour plus. So there is enough demand from corporates, and there is enough supply chain specialists like NextGen, as well as anode specialists like Epsilon to come forward and look at doing something which is pretty big. Broadly to put it, if you look at the current vehicle population in the country, all of us have access to Vahana.com. India roughly has 33 crore vehicles, out of which 75% are two-wheelers. Almost 20% are four-wheelers. Average battery size in two-wheeler is around 2.5 to 3 kilowatt hour. Average car has 35 to 40 kilowatt hour battery. Average bus, which is currently mostly being currently supplied through STU, CTU tenders, and I believe in the last 1 year, almost more than 10,000 buses have been tendered. 50% of that, one of the tenders, has gone to Tata Motors, and I think they are. It's all on a revenue plus revenue per kilometer basis. So the demand scenario is significantly, going up. One very interesting factor from the point of view of mobility of people, because what Niti Aayog has projected is that by 2030, 60% of India's population will actually be staying in cities. So other than metros, self-driven cars, you really need to have a good number of buses which can actually ply not only employees but also other people in the cities and towns. If you look at the breakup of buses in India, India currently has 20 lakh buses, out of which 6 lakh are corporate buses. And these are all being used for corporate mobility. and corporates are under tremendous pressure to comply with ESG norms. They are under tremendous pressure to look at EV100 as a solution for them. And because if you look at broadly the decarbonization scenario, 80% in a manufacturing setup is industrial decarbonization, 20% is mobility-based decarbonization. If you look at services-based decarbonization, 90% is purely energy-based, and 10% or 15% is mobility-based. So when you talk about buses number, 6 lakh corporate buses, 4 lakh school buses, 2 lakh STU, CTU buses, and almost 8 to 9 lakh intercity buses. So when you talk about corporate buses, are they interested to move towards electric mobility? Very much. The scenario is pretty, exciting in terms of the demand for battery electric buses, but currently the viability is significantly missing, because if you look at a per kilometer cost for an internal combustion engine bus today, it is 50 rupees average per kilometer for a 9-meter bus. For a 12-meter bus, it could be 60 or 65 rupees per kilometer. But when you talk about 35 lakh to 45 lakh pricing for an internal combustion engine bus as compared to 1 crore or 1.5 crore price for a battery electric bus, the scenario, becomes very difficult. So, in fact, we have done a presentation to government at one level in Delhi EV cell, where we have requested them to consider some different criteria whereby the demand for buses can be actually pushed up. So if you look at us, the per capita, per million availability of buses also in India is roughly around 1400 buses per million population. If you look at some of the developed countries, they are at 5,000 to 6,000 buses per million population. So India has a potential from a 20 lakh bus scenario going up to 60 to 70 lakh buses scenario at an average price of 1 crore per bus. So you can imagine 50 lakh additional buses coming to the market with an average price of 1 crore. So what is the size of buses required in this market only in the next 7 to 8 years? And each bus on an average will require 250 to 300 kilowatt hour battery. And most of them will be lithium ion batteries. Sodium ion is still far away. It cannot happen so easily. Lithium ion as a technology is very well established. So if you take 10% penetration of buses in the 10% penetration of mobility in the country, whether it is two-wheeler, three-wheeler, cars and some amount of intercity trucks, because even if somebody tomorrow goes to say hydrogen mobility, which is very, very viable as far as 450 kilometer plus mobility is concerned on a daily basis minimum, it still requires a 100 kilowatt hour battery, because energy support is required during peak and trough movements. So that can only be done through a battery. So if you put all these things put together, even at 10% mobility, the requirement for batteries could be anything between 400 to 500 gigawatt hour. So the government of India has a target looking at 30% penetration by 2030. Our own estimate as CES on a worst case scenario, middle case business as usual scenario, and best case scenario is 4 crore electric vehicles on road, 6 crore electric vehicles are on the road, and 12 crore electric vehicles on road. So you can imagine the demand for batteries in this country. Globally, just to read out some of the numbers, Asia Pacific ex-China, people are talking about 220 gigawatt hour capacity by 2025, and 2030 they are talking about 325 gigawatt hour. Europe, they are talking about 395 and 1130 gigawatt hour by 2025 and 2030. North America is 540 and 1260 gigawatt hour. And China is, they are talking about 3,400 gigawatt hour by 2025 and 5,800 gigawatt hour by 2030. So the numbers are just humongous. Fortunately, with recycling technologies taking shape and the use of lithium in batteries, which is around less than 7%, recycling of various other materials, I think the momentum in the sector should be significantly higher. The demand scenario looks very positive. You can imagine a scenario when we talk about a country like US, which has 33 crore vehicles with 80% passenger cars, getting reversed in our country where we have 80% two-wheelers and 20% other vehicles. And if you imagine with India, average age of 29 years, and when most of the people at the age of 29, 30 are relatively, and have an averagely educated person is relatively well settled when he is at the age of 29, 30. The first thing he does in life is goes ahead and buys a car, whether it's a mini car or whatever. You can imagine the demand scenario in a country like ours. So it's just going to be humongous. Plus, what is going to be emerging most important is that we are looking at 500 gigawatt of renewable energy, right? So when renewable is there, which is around 8 or 9 hours on a daily basis, which where sun rays are available, maybe good amount of wind is available, but wind is only there, say from April, May onwards till September, which is high wind season during the rainy season. But when you talk about renewable, intermittent power requirement coming from storage could be just humongous. There are two reports which have come out. TERI says on a 450 gigawatt hour, 450 gigawatt requirement for batteries, for renewables, around 6 to 7% will be requirement for storage running 4 hours a day. So it will be around 110 to 120 gigawatt hour. CEW talks about 350 gigawatt hour requirement divided by 4. So 87 to 90 gigawatt hour requirement for batteries. So you can imagine the kind of scenario that can emerge. And we are not talking about when the renewable actually happens, what are the issues faced in terms of curtailment, which actually drives storage. We are not very sure because India has never seen that kind of a scenario where so much of renewables are going to get targeted and handled through system, to grid, to microgrids and distributed energy and stuff like that. So I think the scenario can just be beyond imagination in the coming years. Maybe another 4 or 5 years will actually tell what can actually happen. According to me, the real growth in batteries, despite the fact that whatever I told you will happen in the next 5 to 7 years, the real growth for batteries will start happening from 2028-29 onwards, when the demand for electric vehicles actually picks up significantly. I hope I'm able to elaborate the demand scenario as far as India and the world is concerned. One more very important point is Mr. Jadhav also mentioned about IRA. So you can imagine US government has given $370 billion of incentives. Now if you look at all PLI schemes put together in India, I don't think the incentives would have probably crossed 1 lakh rupees, 1 lakh crore, right? Somewhere it is 18,000, somewhere it is 20,000. So a country with 4 times populations of the size of US, then, energy consumption at 1100 units, 1200 units as compared to what is there in the US of around 11,000 units. So US is at 9 times our energy consumption. And the amount of renewable power that US is trying to put up by 2030 is 2800 gigawatt. So if that is the situation in the US, you can imagine the demand for batteries in the US and what stretch scenario it can actually contribute towards raw material and other supply chain factors in the coming decade. I think we are all smart enough to understand that. Any questions, I can take it.
Thank you, sir, for giving a very broad view about the demand, that whether it is global or India, that we can estimate. Let me have views of Mr. Kirti Verma. Being a young startup, I wanted to understand why he jumped into the battery segment and whether it was a correct choice and what are the things that you're doing. Kirti, can you hear me?
Hi, Praveen. Yes, I can hear you. Unfortunately, I'm traveling right now and on a train, so my video might not be very clear, so I'll just stick to the audio part for now, but I'll be very happy to interact with everyone after the session in person or maybe through a different video calls. So Praveen, like you said, young startup, it's been quite a journey for the last 3 to 4 years. Primarily, we started out as a lithium supply chain company with strong roots in South America, primarily Brazil and Bolivia. And in that journey, we started working with KRCI, which is a Government of India institute under the Department of Science and Technology, to develop LFP. So we started supplying them consistent lithium carbonate to help in their growth. And once the technology was developed, we really appreciated the technology. We understood that there's a lot of value that we can add in the Indian ecosystem, because LFP was becoming a key raw material for the last 2 years. So we acquired the technology in India and also globally exclusively. We are starting off our setup here in India with a 3 gigawatt cathode materials line, primarily dedicated to high power and high energy LFP materials. Like Mr. Chandrasekhar was saying and the other people, just to kind of echo their words, the Indian market is so huge, but the amount of consumption we have today here is almost non-existent when compared to countries like China, where they're producing more than 99% of the entire global supply of LFP, and they consume most of it as well. So when it comes to Indian cell manufacturers, when it comes to establishing the Indian ecosystem, not only is it very crucial to have a very secure supply chain, but also a very localized supply chain. And one of the biggest things that we are proud of as a company is that we do not have in any way or form any supply chain based out of China. So lithium, unfortunately, as of today, is not uh, available for that. But all the key raw materials, which make up more than 85% of our raw materials, be it the iron, the phosphate, or the carbon precursors, are sourced locally in India. So we're very proud of that. Even the equipment, even though the CAM materials business is not very relevant in India, the equipment also, even though there's a lot of Chinese companies doing it, we're preferring to partner with Indian companies and also European countries to develop the technologies necessary for the production as well. So it has been a very interesting journey, and for the last 2-3 years, there's been a lot of guidance, even from companies like Epsilon and elsewhere. So it has been a great journey. I'm pretty sure we will try to be India's largest LFP manufacturer going forward with continued support from every one of you.
Thank you, Kirti. I wanted to ask Sai Prasad ji, sir. Are you looking at a complete battery ecosystem, and do you see all players in India, or do you feel that there might be need for a collaboration? And what are the areas that we are lacking which needs to be taken up at a faster level?
So when you talk of the ecosystem, it's basically your policy matters, your technology, your infrastructure, and the skilled manpower available. As of now, as we said, this is just all these four are, because it's an emerging field, all these four are lacking today, not only in India, but globally also, to meet with the demand. Whatever we are doing now is we are just running the mile as we go ahead, just trying to cater to the requirements and the development that is happening. But overall, the figures that Mr. Chinchulkar rattled off, is so huge, the whole demand is so huge. It's very difficult, rather it's quite overwhelming in the front end. As we go ahead, as he rightly said, 7 years, 10 years down the line, hopefully it will start plateauing out or leveling out from the ecosystem creation that is required. So if you talk about the policy matters, as he rightly said, there was fame for the vehicle at the front end. There was ACC PLI that was there, but that was for cell manufacturing. Downstream, there is nothing that has been announced, which but none of the governments that way, other than the US IRA that has been, it has announced, none of the governments, whether it was the European Commission or any other government, have really announced for downstream any subsidies. Try and understand, for the whole green business, net zero that has been laid out globally, out of the 11 potential, there are 2 potential is the mobility sector and the power storage. And both of them totally contribute to literally 4 trillion total economy of only for these 2 sectors put together by 2030, that too. So it's such a huge demand and investment that is required to meet with these only for the mobility and your energy storage part of view. So there is a lot of funding that will be required. Like if you take, for example, when we talk about Niti Aayog, of course, the figures are a little bit here and there that we can talk about. And the demand keeps on increasing every now and then. But if you talk about 100 gigawatt hours, the amount of investment for cell manufacturing required is 30,000 to 35,000 crores, only for 100 gigawatt hours as such. That is 3,000 crores per gigawatt hours. And out of that, 50% is for cathode manufacturing. This, when I'm seeing cathode manufacturing, it is only purely processing part, where India can really take a lead over there. 20% is for anode manufacturing, and the balance 30% for electrolytes and separators that are required, and for the charging area, as well as for the cell packs. So overall, the requirement is quite huge. The policy matters have to be looked into to support the complete industry as such. That is one. Secondly, when you talk about technologies are changing left, right, every day, because it's such a new field. The whole development is happening so fast. Whether it is anode, whether you have synthetic graphite, you have natural graphite, or you have a combination of synthetic natural, then you have agglomeration. There is, to add further to have, you have anode silicon that is coming in. In cathode, you have NMCs, you have the lithium ion, the LFP that is there, then LMFP that has come in now. So it is continually, then you're talking about sodium ion batteries that are coming in. On the electrolyte front, if you see, you have right from the lithium hexafluorophosphate, even sodium fluoride coming in now on the electrolyte. You're talking about solid state batteries instead of the liquid, more from a safety point of view, where you have powder, conductive powder or thin films coming in over there. The cell pack previously was from cell to packs, packs to the modular, to the module. But now they're going right from cell to module, module to pack. Now they're going directly from cell to the pack, pack as such, to reduce the weight of the. So many things are happening all across on the technology front. So it's, and today there's nothing, fundamental research, if you say in India for this, is very less. And we require to have that R&D development coming in. But it is more to acquire the technologies that are already existing, which is actually much prevalent today in Southeast Asia, if you see, whether it is China, Korea, or Japan. There's nothing in the West, hardly anything in the West, frankly speaking. So it's very easy to identify technology, and if possible, to collaborate with them. And when we talk about infrastructure, most of the manufacturing, if you see from a processing point of view, is going to be modular. It's going to be modular that you just keep on increasing the capacity. It will change as you go year by year. The process technology might change 20, 30%, but most of the basic things will remain the same. So, and the requirement is so huge, whether it is like in anode manufacturing, we require basically kilns, and you require furnaces, and you require the milling machines. Like for a 10,000 ton, we require 200 milling machines. Okay, so if you talk about 100,000 tons, it just multiplies. But there is no manufacturer today, even for the equipment part of. When you talk about infrastructure, I'm not talking about land. That always with all the necessary regulatory and the statutory aspects. But even if you look at from an infrastructure point of view, for equipment itself, for the designing part of it, engineering part of it, or even from an implementation part of it. Today, with so much of development happening all across in the chemical field, with the China Plus One, there is really a dearth of talent that is, even from engineering point of view. And skilled manpower, as we said, is always in shortage when this such a huge growth is planned. So a lot of things that we require to do. It is not only public, private, or it is academic institutions and industry, but also within the industry, also a lot of collaboration and collaboration will have to happen.
Thank you, sir. Kirti, any additional view apart from what Sai Prasad ji talked about?
No, definitely. I think most of the points he said are along the same lines that we are observing as well. The lack of talent is one thing that I can very extensively say is across the industry. This not only comes down from localized lack of talent, but moreover in generally as well, the electrochemical skills that are required to kind of not only formulate the cells or design the cells or optimize the cells, but are from our side, the synthesization of the materials based on different parameters and characteristics. So we are seeing a lot of lack of that. But luckily, one thing that we have that is working for us is the support of ARCI, which in itself has a huge team of scientists and doctorate students that are kind of guiding a lot of the research going through. I don't come from a electro or chemical background, so our scientists are kind of innovating based on how the industry is progressing forward. We are understanding that a lot of the specifications for cell manufacturers vary widely across the industry based on their requirements, on how they perceive their end usage as. So based on that, since we have a strong R&D institute supporting us and innovating continuously, we are able to overcome that a little bit. But again, yeah.
Thank you. Sai Prasad ji, sir, how do you look at the battery manufacturing technologies? And as you rightly said, there is not too much of R&D which is happening. So we will have to look more at an acquisition strategy for Indian companies if they want to do the complete end-to-end kind of a scenario. So what's your view on this, and what are the opportunities for chemical companies at different levels, MSME level, mid-level, and high level? So if you can talk about that, because that will be more helpful for them to explore strategies and move in the right direction before things start growing up.
Yeah, right. So basically, if you look at the complete the manufacturing cycle for battery, right, from as we go upstream, so it is the mining, the processing that happens, then finally the cell manufacturing, the active materials, the cell manufacturing, the packs, and then getting into the battery manufacturing. And of course, the charging, and then completing the cycle by having the recycling part of it over there, the circularity part of it. So overall, if you look, mining in India today, of all, like whether it is lithium is the latest find that we have graphite, we have manganese, we have the iron ore. So basically, from a cathode point of view, whether it is LFP, that is lithium iron phosphate technology that is there. So we have the requisites that are there. Of course, phosphoric acid we import quite a lot, but the requisites are there from an LFP point of view. So, and basically mining, but the other part, whether it is nickel, cobalt, as we go ahead for the other minerals, that is the important. But the same story exists in China also. But then also China was able to take it up more on the processing part of it. So they have built their complete base on the processing part of it, which India today can do. And most of it, the beneficiation part is all chemical processing that is required, whether it, and all the salts basically that are there are basic, the salts that are there is basically an acid-alkali combination that we have. So whether it is the salts or the oxides that are required from a lithium point of view, it is all possible from a chemical point of view. Also the graphite, the natural graphite, if you do the purification, major requirement is the fluorine compound, the HF that is required. So all if you see for the active material, whether it's the anode active material or the cathode active material, it is all chemical processes that are there. And it's the whole battery is basically a chemical energy being converted into electrical energy. So the processing part of it, right up to active materials, going further as NextGen also is doing from the electrolyte part of it. So all the electrolyte is nothing but basically chemicals. The salts that are there, which are in the organic solvents, so whether it is methyl carbonate, it is ethyl carbonate. Also, when you talk about the separators, they are all basically polyethylene or polypropylene that are there. As we go ahead, basically, as we said, even you'll have like lithium hexaphosphate, you will have sodium fluoride also coming in. So lot of, it's all chemical base that is there. So from a chemical industry point of view, there are a lot of things that chemical industry can come into. Like we for anode also came in from a chemical industry. NextGen also is a chemical industry. It's only at the cell level that whether it is the backward integration that the automobile industry is doing, or the battery industry is from a synergistic business is doing horizontally or parallelly. But otherwise, at the downstream part of it, at the upstream part of it, it is all chemical-based that is required. And there is a lot of involvement that chemical industry can take. Unfortunately, most of the majors in chemical industries have not taken that step, which should be taken going ahead to have a good base as such. As we said, on the technology part, as we said, it's we can acquire technology, which is very much prevalent today, as we said, in China, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. These are the hubs where the whole technology has really developed. And from there, it has gone to the West as such. So today also, most of the cell manufacturing is happening in these particular areas only. And from there, whether it's the Panasonics or the LGs or the Samsungs, these are the ones who are actually doing all the cell technology and providing to the West as well as to India today. Whatever packs we are getting, all are coming in from there. And they are looking forward also to have collaboration because they know the Indian market. India has been doing automobiles for such a long time. It has been exporting. And today, the very easy step where the regulatory factors also are lower is our two-wheelers, where major of our vehicles come in from two-wheelers. So there's a lot of potential which the chemical industry has. Technology, as we said, we can corroborate within the industry also. There's so much of demand. Today, people are not able to fulfill that demand, and they're ready to give their technology provided you give a royalty. People are ready to give the technology because they want to be part of that. And there's so much of space, there is hardly any competition you can see from that point of view because there is so much of demand that is there. And there is so much of that any new player, even if 10 new players come in tomorrow, I don't think it will be a crowded place, frankly speaking.
Thank you, sir. Begin, if you can add.
Yeah, actually, Mr. Sai Prasad covered it very nicely. Just a few additions I would like to make. Like, the first point, like whether we go for our own R&D or we go for some acquisition, or in our case, like technology collaboration. So just an example for NextGen, we anticipate the demand and we believe there would be a demand which is forthcoming and we have to gear up for that. So, we in proactively, although we don't have upfront commitments from our customers, but we tied up with Mitsubishi Ube, and then, we are getting into a technology transfer agreement with them. They will be, transferring the technology for electrolyte manufacturing. As Mr. Sai Prasad mentioned, the technology collaborators are concentrated in, you see, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and these countries. So there's nothing in West as of now. So having said that, I fully believe India should have their own R&D landscape. But to kickstart the process, we need to have this acquisition route of technology. Let us get technology, let us ramp it up. Let us, make India as a country, which can showcase like we can still be good in manufacturing. That doesn't mean we don't work in technology, but for a quick restart, we should have this kind of approach. Secondly, if we talk about opportunities for chemical manufacturers, I think there are tremendous opportunities. The technology is also evolving, as Mr. Sai Prasad told us, we are going from liquid electrolyte to solid electrolyte. It's all about chemicals, the additives which are going into the electrolyte like LiFSI or LiPO2F2, or, the chemicals needed to make these additives like hydrofluoric acid, or, for salts like PCl5, and tremendous opportunities. We still have some small scale, some medium scale players, and we talk a lot to them, and at times, they're baffled, like, is there still a demand like this coming up? So, this kind of realization is still to sink in within the, smaller players. But I believe there is tremendous opportunity over there, and it is just that, we have to be at the right time, at the right place. That's my brief view on this.
So one last question. The government is doing a lot, but do you need any tweaking or do you need funds, or how do you talked about a big investment that US is
Yes,
doing.
yes,
We
yes,
cannot think about those kind of investments
yes,
in India.
yes.
So let me have your views, and then I will jump to Chandra and also to Sai Prasad ji and also to Kirti Verma. And I would
Yes.
like to wrap in another 10 minutes so that after that they can relax, and it will some time for the bar to get ready, and then we will open it up for cocktails and dinner.
No, no,
So
I'll
this is
be
the last question, don't worry. I see a lot of smile on the faces of our delegate. I think it has been a really tiring day, right from 9:15 onwards. We started at 9:30 with a 15 minutes delay. So I won't take much of a time. So very short and crisp answers so that it gives us also breaking news for ICL.
No, no, I'll be very short, Praveen. We do deliberate a lot on these things and what we need from government. So, two things come to us very naturally. Like, one is, we have to invest, and as Mr. Sai Prasad also mentioned that there is a PLI scheme which is given to battery manufacturers, but for the material providers, raw material providers like us, the still, it is not there, and I think government and some industry forums are working on it. But, one thing would be for material providers also, there should be some scheme, some PLI scheme, which is, we have represented to industry forums also. Second thing, which is becomes very critical for, like players like Epsilon or Neogen, like, is we have to invest in capex upfront. So essentially what PLI does is they give you an incentive when you sell the batteries for the battery manufacturers. But all these poor guys have to invest much upfront, maybe 3 or 4 years upfront. Till then you are on your own. So this is one point basically if, like for, companies like us, we got some subsidy on the interest cost of the finances or, cheap land or some subsidy in electricity, something like that. That can really help in, for us when we are on own in the 3, 4 years of putting up the capacities. That would really help us.
Chandra Sekharji, if you can give brief answers.
Uh, See, important part is that government has announced ACC PLI, good incentives of 18,000 crores has been given to cell manufacturer. Well, obviously, deep, if you look at the likely demand scenario in the country, I think the entire supply chain also needs to be significantly benefited. First thing. Second thing is what we are missing out is that if you see some of the new players in the mobility sector, OEMs and, they are not actually getting the kind of funding they should ideally get from our, banking system. If you look at, some of the RBI guidelines, anything who addresses, any company who addresses or any product that actually addresses sustainable development goals of the United Nations actually falls under priority sector. But they are not getting the kind of funding, or bankers are not really open because at times banking system probably is not in a position to really understand the entire manufacturing side of the battery and cell level. So that is one area which needs to be very, very clearly improved, and that support needs to be given by the government, and the financing should be very, very long term. It should not be driven by, say, balance sheet and say, I will only give you 5-year financing. It's a typical case where, when you talk about bus operators in the country, there are 20 lakh buses in the country, but the one single bus operator doesn't even have more than 1% share. So there is no institutional money or institutional ownership of the asset. And if you go to trucks, the market is still very bad because somebody will own 5 trucks, 10 trucks. So, the scenario is pretty bad in terms of ownership as well as financing. So financing is a big opportunity. Government should look at 12 to 15 years sort of a long-term financing that should be made available. And I think looking at the size of the country, the dependence on imported crude, the localization of energy that needs to happen, I think the amount of incentive level that needs to be given by the government have to be significantly higher. As ISA, as India Energy Storage Alliance, we have been pushing government. We had a meeting few days before even with DHI, Department of Heavy Industries, to come out with second sort of PLI scheme. And we are pushing at our level, but, a deep dive into what, as a country, is probably needs to be, thought over in terms of the financing needs and, support in terms of subsidies and incentives.
Thank you, sir. Kirti, your views, your final views, and then I will come to Sai Prasad ji to do the, what we can say, concluding remarks. Kirti, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So, in lines with what Mr. Chandrasekhar was mentioning, there's a lack of awareness throughout, not only in the financial banking industry, but also a lot of the governments, either be it state or central, is not fully aware of the entire breadth and width of things that takes to push this ecosystem forward in India.
Thank you, Kirti.
So we are from the industry or people outside the industry, and also in lines with what Mr. Pekin also said, there's a lack of finance, or I'd say, or support from the government as of today, because like you're saying, the capacity to install the capacities that would require high amount of capex to be incurred well in advance, even before the cell manufacturers come up. So we have to be the anchor point for that industry, and for that, the amount of money it takes to set that up is quite high. So those 2 points to echo, my previous panelists.
Thank you, Kirti. Sai Prasad ji, your final comments.
The final comments to be brief, yes. As the question as it goes, it is yes, the government support is required. Just I'll give you a small calculation on this particular thing as such if you require. As we say, suppose 100 gigawatt hours is what is required by 2030 roughly. That equals to 30,000. Out of that, 8,000 crores will be for anode, which has to be done if we have to do it for the next, do this in the next 7 to 8 years. For a company like us, having a turnover of 3,000 crores, investing 8,000 crores in the next, only for this particular vertical, it becomes difficult. So a lot of support is required from the government on this particular thing. And as rightly said, whether it is the interest rates or whether it is on long term, how long term it can be given. Thirdly, it is also, the government has to see it as a net off from the imports, because you are replacing ICE, so you are replacing the fuel imports. So you have to see it as a net off. Fortunately for India now, the Russian fuel is cheaper, so the net off doesn't seem to be very attractive as of now. But as we go ahead, as the petroleum prices and feedstock prices increases, this surely shows a clear where the government has to think of how it can support this particular industry in the future.
So a big round of applause for all our speakers.